everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Live Lunch with KUDZUKIAN. I'm your host, Misty, and I want to give y'all a minute to come on into the live. If you're following us, make sure that you share this out with your friends, your family, coworkers, teammates, whoever can use the knowledge that we have been dropping for about 2 months. I think we started this series back in November, just about all things podcasting and how to start your podcast and what you need to do with the knowledge that we give you here at KUDZUKIAN. And so before I let you know, well, I guess I can go ahead and let everybody know this. This is the last episode for now. This is the last episode for now. And then after that, we will see y'all soon. But before we completely end it, let's do a recap because there's been so much information that you had to receive, so many great conversations and all of that. And so let's start from the beginning. And we started off talking about our 5-step creative process here at KUDZUKIAN to help you jumpstart your journey of starting your podcast. And what did that look like? That was, you started off with ideation. What is ideation? That big idea. Simply, what is your idea? What are you going to talk about? Are you going to talk about fitness? Are you going to talk about food? Are you going to talk about all things lifestyle? What is that idea? And so that's the very first thing you need to think about. You need to consider. And then after that, you go into development. This is the figuring out what the frequency of your podcast is going to be. Are you going to release monthly? Are you going to release weekly, bi-weekly? What does that look like? And also the type of podcast you're going to have. Are you going to have an audio only podcast? Are you going to have just a video podcast? Are you going to do both? And so this is where you kind of figure out what does that look like? And then also the style of your podcast. Will you have one host, two hosts? What does that look like? And also topics. Think about topics and things like that. And also think about if you're going to have guests. Are you going to have a guest on your first podcast or your first episode, your second episode? So kind of nailing those things down. This is where you do it in that development stage. And then after that, you go into production. It's time to record. It's time to get your mics together. It's time to set up your camera, have your team in place so they can press that red button on the camera if it's a video podcast. It's time to record. And then after that, there is distribution. Where is your podcast going? Is it going to YouTube? Is it going to Spotify, Stitcher, OTT, all of that? That's distribution. Where is your audience going to listen to your podcast? And then lastly, promotion. You know what promotion is. Everybody's on social media. So are you creating the necessary content to show everybody where they need to go to listen to your podcast? And so that was about the early stages of when we started Live Lunch with KUDZUKIAN, just talking about our 5-step creative process. You were able to, I had a conversation with our founder and CEO, Larry Robinson, which was really, really fun. And so you know who he is. So also, if you check out episode 4, this is where we dive into audio equipment. And so we had Josh Holt come in and talk to you about his favorite types of mics and what he recommends, sound, and all of that. You know, Josh likes the expensive stuff. And so go check out episode 4 where you can get all of the details. And then also in that episode, if you look in the description, we give you a suggested equipment list that you can download. So make sure you check that out. And then after that, I was joined by our director of user experience, Asha, and we pretty much just discussed the beauty of podcasting, why we like podcasting. And one of the takeaways that we realized is that you get to be your authentic self. You don't have to worry about code switching. You don't have to worry about censoring yourself. You get to talk about anything you want to talk about because it's your platform, it's yours, and you can be free to be yourself. And so that was pretty fun. And episode 7, we actually was joined by someone who is a member of the podcast club here at KUDZUKIAN. She goes by the name of Stacy Sade. That was such a fun episode we did. Her podcast is called the Anastasis Podcast, where she talks about moving and relocation and how that emotionally affects people because she's in that space, she's in that business. And her episode or her podcast is actually out. She just released, I believe, episode 4 or 5 last week. And that's on, like I mentioned earlier when we talked about distribution, that's on Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, all of that. And so you can check that out. And then also go listen to that episode where she talks about her experience here at KUDZUKIAN and her experience being a member of the podcast club. And then what happened after that? After that, we talked to our producers. So we have a few producers here on our staff. And so we wanted them to give their perspective on what is it like being a producer? Because most of the producers are behind the scenes. But if you're starting, you're going to play pretty much a lot of these roles that I've talked about. But they talked about their process, and a lot of them, research was a major part. And so when you're thinking about starting your podcast, especially I think when it comes to producing and doing the research, you can kind of tie that into the development stage. And so, and also if you're looking to get guests, it's good to research your guests. I believe Krista, she talked about that, because you don't want to just go in not knowing anything about the topic that's about to be discussed or anything about your guest that you're having on. You don't want to do that. So that's why research is necessary. And so that was really informative. So make sure that you go check that out. We had Chuck O'Bannon and we had Joy Doss. And after that, I can't remember what episode it was. We even talked about youth in podcasting. We had the amazing London Christian, who actually, she served as a producer for that show. She put that whole show together because for us, we didn't necessarily think about how does this work for youth in podcasting? And so it was great to get her perspective as a youth who actually started her podcast here as an intern back in, was it August? And so she talked about that process, how her parents felt about it, and how she came up with the topic because she's in art, she's in dance, and wanted to know how does that affect youth and things like that. And also being a student, she's homeschooled. So how does that work, having to focus on schoolwork and having to record this podcast? And so that was really cool. And so just last week, I was joined by 3 individuals, of course, Ashi Manuel, Krista Scott, and Jeremy McKnight, and we talked about taking your podcast live. And what does that look like? So now you're getting into the event production space, which of course is what we do here at KUDZUKIAN. We do content creation and event production. And so preparing yourself for that from a marketing perspective, preparing yourself for that from a producer's perspective, and preparing yourself for that from an event production management perspective. And so that was extremely fun and it was extremely necessary. And so I know I said a lot, but I don't know, we had a total of about 10 plus episodes about podcasting on this series of Live Lunch with KUDZUKIAN. And so I encourage you to go back from the beginning and review them, listen to them. You can always, and I said this plenty of times before, that if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. We see them, we're alerted when they come up, and we can answer them there. Or if you're ready to get started, you can reach out to me, Misty@KUDZUKIAN.com. That's Misty@KUDZUKIAN.com. And you can just shoot me an email and say, Misty, I'm ready to be a part of the podcast club. And we'll get you started. I'll get you started. I'll send over the packages, the price packages, and all of that. And then also, like I said before, you have a few things that you can download in the description below. You can download the free suggested equipment list, and then also that free podcasting 101 kit. You can get all of that in the description below. I want to say thank y'all so much. This has been a journey. This has been a fun journey. I've been stretched, but I've learned so much, and it's so good to see and get those perspectives from the people behind the scenes, the people who are actually part of the podcast club. And so I've learned a lot, and there were a lot of great takeaways just for me. And so I hope this was informative for you, and I hope it was beneficial to you. And we want to get you started on your journey. And like Larry said, just start. Just start. You know, he had those parting words. I'm not deep like him, but if he was here, I know he would have something better to leave you with. But I encourage you to start on your podcast journey, and we will be back very, very, very soon. We will be back very, very, very soon for Live Lunch with KUDZUKIAN. Until then, I will see you later. Bye, y'all. Thank you.